Another one, 8:30 here on a Friday, of course, because it's Friday Live. This is the Bailey and French Friday Live, though, where we talk about all things humanising the world of work. And I'm joined today by Holly. Hi, Holly.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Look, I'm in the office. Can you tell? And
I'm in the office.
Yeah, I know, with the orange, and we got the blue behind us. So this isn't a hybrid conversation, but it is virtual, even though we're in an office together. Weird. It's great. It's great to have you with us. Thank you for joining. And we're going to be talking today just specifically about a specific topic, which has come up this week with a number of different clients in relation to line manager support and line manager conversations, and how to, I guess, build inclusivity and build a bit of engagement with teams as they return back to work and into a hybrid environment, and are dealing with situations that are a bit uncomfortable and people don't really know. And as people return from holidays, how do we keep people engaged and excited so that they don't follow the holiday blues on into work? So all of those topics. How are you feeling about speaking about all of those today, Holly?
I don't know if half an hour is enough, but we'll give it a go.
Every time, I guarantee every time we will run out of time. But if anyone's got any thoughts, anyone's got any comments or wants to throw a difficult question at us, we are live on LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIn have actually pulled, I don't think you can comment on LinkedIn anymore, but you can send us some chats. If you know us, you can pop us emails and they'll pop up as well. So we'll try and answer any questions as we go through. But Holly and I, we were having this chat before we went live. We both come from different tables of strengths assessment and development. We both worked for a number of years in different different ways around strengths assessment and strengths development through performance management, career, recruitment. There are all sorts of applications of positive psychology and strengths. And it feels great to be working alongside you here at Bailey and French and then having this chat around strengths together. That feels cool, right?
Good to play to our strengths. But no, it's nice to see it from the other side, because I've done a lot of assessment with strengths, so like coming at it from the other angle and using your strengths once you're in role. It's nice to see the other side.
Yeah, and we've both been involved in similar projects as well. It was really great to hear, you've been working alongside HSBC for a number of years, and so did I. And there's a number of different great stories and accolades that I'm sure we'll get into. But what are you hearing from your clients at the moment, Holly?
So I think a lot of it at the moment is we've shifted from well-being. Obviously, well-being is still important. But a lot of the focus at the moment with my clients, I'd say, is around line manager capability. And so, supporting line managers, new line managers, people that have been line managers for a very long time. But in this new world of working, that's the buzz phrase at the moment, so I thought I'd go with it. But yeah, supporting them in terms of how they can then support everybody else, because, leaders are so busy at the moment that they're really relying on their line managers to step up a little bit more, I'd say. And what's the best way of doing that, while keeping consistency but also maintaining authenticity at the same time. And that's kind of a balance between the two, because you don't want to be too prescriptive in how line managers are doing things, but also there has to be a baseline, right, of where you start, and then how do they then bring in that next layer of them adding their own approach to it.
Yeah, and it was really interesting having a chat with you before we came on, because we were talking about, well, hang on, haven't companies already created this guidance for this new way of working? Isn't that what the values on the wall were meant to be for? And what did you say?
I think just with values, they're really important, but often they can feel quite similar, or they can be quite broad as well. And so there kind of needs to be the next thing that sits on top of that as well, to just take it a step further and make it really specific in terms of what we're meant to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was I loved what you said, because for me it felt like that's something that I've resonated with when I'm managing someone, and that the values you've talked about them, what the company expects you to do. But also then there's this next layer which is strengths, right? which is the conversation around, well, what is it about that unique person, the unique people within that team, and how do we bring that to life?
Yeah, and I think when I was a line manager previously, it was like understanding their uniqueness, but my uniqueness and how our uniqueness is. That's not a word. We'll make it a word.
No, that doesn't work.
That does not work. But like we both have different things and different ways of behaving and acting and preferences. And as a line manager, you have to recognize like your own in that situation. So like if I'm a manager and I'm talking to the person I manage about a situation, is the way that I'd approach it, is it a right or wrong way? Am I giving advice based on sort of an objective way of doing something? Is that just my preference in that situation? And then I don't want to put that on them, because just because they do something slightly differently doesn't mean that that's not the right way of dealing with the situation. And so actually as a line manager, you've got to have both in mind in terms of what you bring and you're bringing and what they're bringing, and then working out what the middle ground is, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess the question that would be on most people's minds is how. And we spend a lot of time going, well, you can have this assessment and this is how you would do it. And there are other ways, right?
I think so. I mean, I think the first one is just like having conversations, because I mean, I don't know if other people feel the same, but often, you know, if you're in a position where you're managing or you're leading, it can feel quite vulnerable, I guess, to be talking about your strengths, but also like your weaknesses at the same time. And, you know, a lot of the time people want to come across like they're perfect and like they have no weaknesses. And then you've got some people who actually talk about their weaknesses much more freely than they would ever talk about their strengths. So it can feel, I guess it can feel quite scary. And obviously there's a whole conversation around courage and vulnerability as people who are managing and leading. I think it's just opening up that conversation as a manager with the people that you manage in terms of what you bring and sort of what that unique contribution is, and making space for those conversations. And it's not a one-off conversation, right? You don't just do it once and then you never talk about it again, because you've got a list of what they like doing and what they're energized by, and then you think that just stays the same. It's making sure that you continue that.
Yeah, it's so true what you just said, because I'm thinking about, we've just done a strengths discovery session with our team, okay? And you're right, it's also the different ways that you articulate what you actually mean. So you say it out loud once and then you go, oh, that didn't feel quite right, or now I'm doing it in practice, but I'm behaving in this way with this strength in mind a bit more consciously. Actually, maybe that's not what I meant. Maybe I meant something completely different. And it's interesting. How do you keep that conversation going? How do you create the psychological safety in the first place to go and have those conversations one-to-one and as a group? There's a lot there to unpack for a new line manager who has an awful lot going on. What are you saying to clients that go, yeah, this is all well and good, but this is a bit kind of away from the job, this is all a bit too much, we're already dealing with burnout and stress, and this is maybe just another skill that we're trying to put on someone when there's already a lot going on? What do you say?
Well, the thing is, it's like it is inherently embedded in all of your day-to-day tasks. So I'm thinking about, we just kicked off a new project and we did some of that strengths piece and sort of like a mini strengths discovery, I guess, to kick off the project. And it was still very much, we were focused on the work and the tasks that we had to do, but we put that extra lens on top of it. And it, you know, it takes like 15 minutes, half an hour, depending on how many people you've got. But actually you can kickstart a lot of big projects or big tasks by adding that lens. So it's not necessarily, obviously you have to take some time to understand how you can identify strengths in other people and sort of think about how you have those conversations. But then once you've got that understanding, it's not necessarily taking any time away from that work, because you just add it into all the things you were doing anyway. You were already having one-to-one meetings with people you manage, right? And you were already kicking off big projects. So actually it's just making space for 5-10 minutes even, or even just like one question. You know, you can post a question in a Teams group chat, like sometimes we do that. And I mean, sometimes those questions are like, what GIF is more like what you're feeling today? But actually sometimes that question can be like, you know, what strength have you used this week that was like unexpected or something like that. So it doesn't actually take that much time, because if you do it often enough, then it doesn't have to. Whereas if you leave it for a long period of time where you're not talking about strengths or thinking about strengths, then it can feel like it would need more time dedicated to it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It means building it. So I guess the question then is, how do you build that in? And you started to answer that. It's how do you build that into the everyday so it doesn't feel like an additional thing? And that kickoff meeting, that's a really good example. Was that an external client that you were working with and a kickoff project?
Yeah, so it was with a client, and you know, with people that had worked together before and people that hadn't worked together before. So there was some understanding, but it was just sort of a get to know you, but in a way that was also beneficial for the work that we were about to be doing, because we were getting to know each other. But that was also giving us information in terms of ways of working, and sort of who's best to go to for what type of thing, and sort of who can we pull on for different types of tasks. So it's like, oh, well, this person here who you've not met before actually really loves organising and planning. So like, if you've got a big thing that you need to try and schedule, they're probably the best person to go to. So it worked in both ways. It was kind of, two birds, one stone.
And the kind of questions that you were asking, do you remember? Because you said just one of them a minute ago, but I take it there was more than one question. And how did you go about? Kind of facilitating.
It started with sort of the lens of ourselves. So us starting to think about what our own strengths might be, because not everybody has that language, right, in terms of what strengths are. So it's creating that common language so we all understand what we're talking about when we say strengths, because there's lots of different meanings out there. So starting with some questions that got us thinking about what our own strengths might be, and then moving into, okay, now we all have that baseline understanding. How does that feed into as a team? Where are our overlaps as a team, and where are their differences? And then from those differences, that's when you can start to understand where who would be best to go to for what type of tasks. So it kind of was like a multi-layer, but it didn't take very long either at the meeting. I mean, we probably did it for half an hour maybe. So yeah, it's not time intensive, but it was then really helpful, and it was energizing as well, because you're talking about things that you like.
Yeah,
so you that conversation feeling happy anyway.
Yeah, because that's the point, right? So when you talk about strengths, you're identifying things that you love and are energized and passionate to do, not just things that you have the capability and skill or knowledge to accomplish. So it is touching, and people don't necessarily spend all that much time thinking about these things. So I can imagine people were walking away as we were actually. So new people being into a new team, or maybe there's some existing people, but there's some new people, so it's worth redoing that and that kind of platform to have this conversation.
Yeah,
you walk away feeling quite good about what I'm energized by this, and I should do it more. And I didn't know that about you, and that's really cool. And we can connect on that, and we should also connect on XYZ outside of this project, right?
No, yeah, exactly. It gives you that sense of belonging, like you know what your place is in that team, because you can go through sort of roles and responsibilities, and that's one thing that's important to do. But then actually having that other lens on it as well, in terms of, okay, your role is this and your responsibilities are X, Y, and Z. And from that, what are the things that you really enjoy? What are you passionate about? I saw this piece yesterday, I think it was. And it was saying that if you don't feel like you've got a sense of belonging, essentially there's sort of a threat to your level of belonging within a team, like that experience is similar to or equates to what you feel like when you've got physical pain, which obviously just shows like why it's really important and something that is worth doing.
Yeah, wow. Say that stat again.
This sunlight is really like shining on my face.
The sun is shining on the right.
No, it was if there's a threat to your social needs, which include your sense of belonging within a group, within a team, that experience is similar to feeling physical pain.
I love that.
Yeah.
I don't love that, because that means there's an awful lot of people out there in physical pain that don't necessarily need to be, if they had these kind of conversations. But that is, yeah, that's quite profound. And then I guess we all know the impact of then talking about the strength and the release and the energy that you get from talking about that, but also then the positive interaction with someone else. You get this kind of positive chain reaction throughout the team and throughout the organization. But I didn't know that it actually caused physical pain or was received in the same way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's not actual physical pain. That would be quite impressive.
Yeah.
The same level, like, as in, I guess, like the intensity and like the negative impact is probably of a similar level to what physical pain would be causing. And then that's something that, as a line manager, you can start to take responsibility for, and creating that culture where you do emphasize the importance of that, and you bring that in and you role model it yourself as well. I think it'd be the same for line managers as well. Is like they want to feel a sense of belonging in their team, and they've got sort of that line manager role, but also what else is it that they bring to that relationship that they've got with their direct report, or however many people they manage. It's like they're not just the line manager. What else can they bring? So it kind of works both ways.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I know, and you've said this before, about the difference between inclusion and belonging, which I didn't know or appreciate. I don't think that inclusion is more about respect and trust building, and whereas belonging is maybe a little bit more of what you've just said there about knowing your absolute unique contribution to a team or an organization or to a relationship. And that's a two-way thing as well. So most, like you just said, maybe most people are putting that, as we did at the beginning of this conversation, we said, oh, it's about the line manager and line manager help. Actually, how do we equip the team to be having these conversations as well and taking accountability for it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, a line manager can role model it from I was going to say a higher up perspective, but that's pretty hierarchical. But like, they can role model opening up those conversations, and particularly if you see people at a more senior level doing that, then you can feel more comfortable as someone who might be a bit more junior. You feel more comfortable having those conversations as well, and spending the time on it, because it's so easy to get caught up in your day-to-day tasks and you think my to-do list is X, Y, and Z, I have to get that done. And trying not to spend any time not doing those things. And we know from a well-being perspective, as we've gone through the pandemic, everybody's been encouraged to go out for a walk, or working slightly more flexibly in terms of their hours if they need to go out for a bit longer during the day, make sure they get some sunlight and things like that. Again, it's not feeling guilty for introducing strengths type conversations into your working day. Or even things like when we talk about strengths and thinking about getting in flow and booster time, we talk about booster time quite a lot here actually in the team, because we'll do something, we'll have 5-10 minutes where we're doing something that's just booster time, where actually it's really energizing for us. Yes, it might not be necessarily related to our to-do list, but that really gets us back into the mindset where we can really sort of smash what we've got to do next. So, whether it's we have 5 minutes just sending each other hilarious gifts, or, that kind of thing. Like, yes, it might not seem like the world's most productive thing, but actually it is in the long run, because once you've done that, you've kind of got it out of your system, you've re-energized yourself, and then you just crack on afterwards as well. And it's feeling like, at any level, feeling like you can do that. But then I think the line manager responsibility is role modeling it and making it, okay to do that.
So the role of the leader, you're right, is to create that environment where these ideas and these ways of working and this environment is encouraged. And actually just having that time and space to have these conversations is part of working productively. I always feel a bit guilty. I always feel a bit kind of, I'm taking 5 minutes here to think about my strengths, or we had a strengths discovery session, and even me knowing all this stuff, and having worked on it for so long, even me going, but I've got to be making that call, or I've got to write that proposal, or I've got to do this and that. And that's not right. What you're saying is build it in. It's part of it's part of the process. Work is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's longer than a marathon. It's
it's an ultra.
It's an ultra, and you've got to do it over time and days in, days out. So actually stopping and taking time to do these positive boosters. And I like what you're saying around, it's got me thinking about what are the activities that you are doing that is like the, I think Netflix, reading the No Rules book from Reed Hastings, it was like, if we can get 80% of our work done, like, or all of our work done in 80% of the time, then we've got 20% of time to fulfill ourselves and re-energize ourselves. And I guess that's what you're talking about, but less structured way. You're kind of doing it in the flow of work, which I like.
Yeah, and I think there's something about knowing, right? You see someone who you know is really busy, and there's someone, there's lots of people in every organization where you think that person is really busy all the time. They've got loads to do. But if you can see that person doing that and spending time on those types of things, like, that's so powerful, surely, because you think that, you know, they're really busy, you know, they've got loads to do, and yet they still understand the importance of that and using their strengths and thinking about their strengths. And there's just something that's so important about that. And I think then what that leads into is actually everybody having an understanding of why that's important. So, you know, we talked about how if you don't feel like you've got a sense of belonging, that can equate to the same impact as physical pain. Like that as comms almost, or like a, you know, really understanding and emphasizing why you're having these conversations, why these conversations are important. So it doesn't seem like it's just another thing that's being thrown into the mix, right? But actually there's research, there's evidence, there's all of this stuff behind why we should be doing this and what the impact is. If everybody understands that, it helps to open up the spaces to do those activities.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because you wouldn't, if it was a hard skill, if it was a Six Sigma kind of project management 101, hey, before we do anything, we need to stop and we need to plan and we need to go through this spreadsheet in this order, thinking about these specific questions, people wouldn't bat an eyelid. You know, they go, well, that's part of the project, that's part of productivity, we need to do that. And what we're saying is just spend that extra few moments during that time, doesn't even have to be additional to it, but just add in a few questions that are around the person and their unique contribution to help them feel like they belong and they know their unique role. That's quite cool. And I guess and I guess spiraling back, because already we've nearly run out of time, how is that happening? And how come you've got such bright sunshine and I'm in the same building with no...
Honestly, I don't know. I feel like I look like a ghost right now.
I just don't know where the sun is. I need to
try and block it out.
Find you after this. But for line managers or new managers or managers that maybe have moved jobs recently, you know, we're talking about the Great Resignation, and you're trying to put your new stamp on the place and trying to, I guess, create this air of positivity in your team. What are some of the key takeaways? Let's summarize. What are the things that they can do? So number one we started off with was, let's have a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, well, actually, number one is probably work out how you can identify strengths.
Ooh, nice.
Because you probably have to start from the beginning. Like, not everybody's gonna know how to do that. So yeah, that's probably the starting point, is actually build your understanding of what are strengths, what do they look like, and how can you notice them in yourself and in other people, so that you can go to those conversations and open up that dialogue.
That's cool, because again, I've made the first mistake that most people would make. Let's go and do that thing we just heard about. No, actually, maybe we need to just spend some time thinking.
I mean, that's probably an action strength of yours. Just go and do
right? We'll get into strengths in overdrive and overplayed strengths another day. But it's a really good point, right? Go away and have a think about them for yourself, and maybe ask yourself those questions. You know, what do I love doing now? What are the things when I feel at my best? What am I doing? And really dig into what were you doing at that moment? What were you feeling? Why did you feel that way? Was it a collaboration connection with someone that you were with? Was it the task that you were focused on? I love the question, you know, what did you do when you were younger? You had no idea what a strength was. You weren't working. You were just doing something that you loved. What was it? For me, playing chess was always a fun thing to do. And I don't really know why. I never even had a chessboard. It was at my granddad's. But every time I went over there, I wanted to play chess. And I don't know why, but that was the kind of the start of it, and understanding why those moments happen for me. And then I guess having that conversation with your team about those moments. And being okay, and like you said, communicating and setting the principle of why we're doing this. That's great. And then asking those conversations to happen continuously. So that was kind of the next step that you said. It's like, let's not just have that one-off conversation at the beginning of this meeting or this check-in. What happens next? What would you suggest happens next?
And I think that's so important, because what I've realised a lot since I've been sort of using strengths in the workplace is like, when I think about what my strengths are and what my like top 3 strengths might be at any given time, like whilst our strengths don't necessarily inherently change, actually the amount we use them does change. And so which ones come to the forefront of our minds when I'm thinking about, okay, what would I say are my top strengths? I've got a fairly good understanding of what strengths are and what my strengths might look like. But it changes. If I was to do it today, you know, I might think about, actually, I'm feeling really energized by planning or by relationship building or whatever. But actually next week, what I'm feeling most energized by might look slightly different, just because of what I'm doing and the way that I'm working. Which is why it's important to keep having these conversations, because if you catch someone on a bad day, you know, their receptiveness to even having that conversation necessarily, or they might focus more on their weaknesses because they're having a bad day or they're feeling a bit more negative. So you need to catch people at different times so that you get a broader sense over a longer span of actually what those strengths might be and how they're using them and when and how they come into play at different times.
Yeah, we haven't got time to go into that, but mood and what you're feeling in that moment can really influence what you're talking about, which is why we say, you know, assessments are part of that, right? If you've got an assessment available to you, you can use that. And also it is about equipping people to have these conversations ongoing, because that's where you unravel and unpick and digest and be curious. Really build strong relationships with people as well.
Yeah, like you really understand each other, because you can see some strengths written down on a page, which can be helpful. And then, you know, you have the conversations, you build those relationships, and you understand actually how you're going to action that as a team. And it doesn't feel like, you know, the line manager can lead those conversations, but actually everybody's on the equal playing field in terms of what are they going to do going forwards to work better with one another. Now they have that understanding, and it's bringing everybody into that conversation and giving everybody an equal part to play in what that looks like. And then that links back to, obviously, you know, the impacts that has for diversity, for inclusion, for belonging, and all of the different things that are hugely important right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And well-being in the flow of work. Because what we just talked about here, it should be part of people's well-being strategy. It just so happens to also be people's line manager capability strategy, future skill strategy. You know, this builds into so much in performance management. You know, as we know, it's so important that we build strengths into performance management for so many reasons. So this isn't an additional thing that we need to do now that it's a hybrid world of work. This is something we should be doing as part of work every day. Find ways that work. And how do we leverage technology would be another question. You know, how do you do Teams in the way that you do, where you send the most hilarious GIF and, you know, always on point with your GIFs. You know, that is the benefit of technology, right? To enable this sort of conversation to happen more frequently or more effectively. It is time. It is 9 o'clock already.
I don't know how that happens, to be honest. And I feel like I've got sunburn now, so I might need to put some sun cream.
You quite possibly have. The light has got so light that the camera, the HUD camera, has picked up that you're in the light, and it's kind of made it a little bit darker. So
okay, that's good. So at least you can see my face a little bit.
Yeah, no, it was okay. But thank you so much for joining. I never want to, it's really interesting, we've been having this, you never want to validate someone and go, I think that was brilliant. Well, you don't care. Like, it doesn't matter what I think. You don't need that validation. You're awesome. But I have really found that interesting, even though I've been working with strengths for so long, and you know that's been really interesting to just talk about that. So thank you.
That's been good. Good way to start the day.
Great way to start the day. Let's get on with it. If you've been listening, thank you. Put some comments on LinkedIn. This will go live on LinkedIn and YouTube. We go live every Friday at 8:30. So look forward to you joining in the future again. Thanks, Holly. See you later.
Thank you.